This time on Film Ranker, we are looking at A Nightmare on Elm Street. While it may not be the scariest of the big three slashers, Nightmare is the most consistently funny and arguably the most creative of the bunch, with Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger combining dark comedy with a glove full of knives. So grab your old-timey hats and green stripy sweaters and let's count them down from the worst to the best. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 remake. There were high hopes for this remake despite it coming from Michael Bay's production company. Jackie Earle Haley had Robert Englund's blessing and looked to be a good choice for a new generation of nightmares. Unfortunately, what we got was a straight-faced bore with a bit too much backstory and way too little comedy. Part 6. Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. It says a lot about the consistency of the original Nightmare franchise that this is the only real stinker of the bunch. The main problem is a combination of an overemphasis on jokes coupled with truly terrible jokes. The direction also doesn't help. It looks made for TV except for the final 10 minutes, which are the cheesiest 3D ever 3D'd. Not even cameos from Alice Cooper and Johnny Depp can save this one. Freddy vs. Jason. After decades of anticipation, it was always going to be a high hurdle to meet audience expectations. To Ronnie Yu's credit, the first half of the film almost crosses that bar. The setup is good and everything on Elm Street works fine. Unfortunately, the second half doesn't pay off, as the epic battle falls flat and everything gets a bit too goofy for its own good. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. The fifth Nightmare gets a lot of hate, and it is certainly a departure from the two films that came before it, but taken on its own merit, it is a better film than it gets credit for. It was rushed, and that shows, but it isn't a terrible conclusion to the Kristen Alice trilogy. The backstory stuff works fine, and even though all the deaths don't totally work, such as the comic book sequence, at least the ideas are there. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddys Revenge. Like its teenage protagonists, the second Nightmare film sees the franchise go through some awkward growing pains. This is the only one in the original series that features a final boy, and the results are interesting. The film has since become an allegory for a teen finding his sexuality, and the theory does have some merit and actually adds a little bit of depth, but whether or not you buy into the subtext theory, the film mostly does its job as a sequel, except maybe for that pool party scene. Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Craven wrote the book on meta-horror with 1996's Scream, but this is really where he planted the seeds that would influence 90s slasher films for better or worse. Craven's return to the franchise he created changes the game. Freddy is back, but this time he is hunting down the real-life director and the other stars of the original. The results are fun, and Heather Langenkamp shines in the role she was literally born to play. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. Recasting is never easy, but this direct sequel to Part 3 does a good job of passing the torch. The bait and switch from Kristen to Alice works surprisingly well, as we get just enough of Tuesday night to feel safe, which makes the surprise twist work. This one also features some of the best kills and sequences of any Nightmare film. The dream loop is an especially great sequence that Englund himself has even named as his favorite of the series. The original, A Nightmare on Elm Street. If you are a child of the 80s, you probably remember your first time seeing the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and it probably scared your socks off. Before the jokes and the kids learning to fight back and the asylum backstories, there was just a guy with claws who was out to kill teens in their dreams, and it was scary. Even if the ending hasn't stood the test of time, Johnny Depp's death sure has, as has Heather Langenkamp's Nancy Thompson, who is still one of the best final girls of all time. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. The third nightmare was where we went from a fun concept to a deep mythos. Nancy returns to help a bunch of troubled kids harness the power of the dream world, and the result is surprisingly rad. It helps that we get Patricia Arquette playing the lead, but it is really the tight and legitimately fun/scary writing that puts this one over the top. The deaths are creepy and fun. Remember the tendon puppet master? The dream powers are a fun twist that makes sense in the world, and the twist death near the end was a legitimate shocker. The original set it all up, but Dream Warriors perfects it. And that wraps up another episode. Who else is still scarred from watching these at a poorly monitored sleepover when you were 8? Please like and subscribe and share your own list of top nightmares, or maybe just check out the other videos, and hopefully I will see you all next time.